of our ongoing series chronicling the federal trial of Sean Puff Diddy Combs. Day 9. In this long-form documentary-style update, we continue to follow the courtroom drama day by day, ensuring you don't miss a single detail. As a reminder, Combs is facing serious federal charges, including sex trafficking, racketeering, kidnapping, and more. And if convicted, the once celebrated hip-hop mogul could spend the rest of his life in prison. Over the past several days, the court has heard emotional testimony from his former longtime partner Cassie, Cassandra Ventura, who alleged horrifying abuse. Now, on day 9, the focus shifts to new witnesses, who add fresh revelations and corroboration to the case. Today's session delivered some of the most dramatic testimony yet, featuring a high-profile music star on the witness stand and an insider from Combs's inner circle. We'll cover everything that happened in chronological order, from the morning's startling witness accounts to the courtroom's reactions and how it all sets the stage for what's next. This video is part of an ongoing series documenting Diddy's trial day by day, so if you're just joining us, welcome through, and be sure to check out our previous episodes for the full story so far. Now let's delve into the events of day 9. Kid Cudi's explosive testimony. One of the most anticipated witnesses in this trial took the stand on day 9, Scott Kid Cudi Mescudi, the Grammy-winning rapper and actor. Kid Cudi's connection to the case comes through Cassie. He briefly dated Cassie Ventura in late 2011 after she purportedly ended her relationship with Combs. This fact would prove fateful. Prosecutors called Kid Cudi as a witness to shed light on an alleged act of retaliation by Combs, and his testimony did not disappoint in its shocking details. Dressed in a simple white t-shirt and leather jacket, Kid Cudi entered the Manhattan courtroom around mid-morning and was sworn in. He began by recounting how he met Cassie and started dating her in 2011, believing she was no longer with Combs. Unbeknownst to him, Cassie's relationship with Diddy had not truly ended. A volatile situation was brewing. In fact, jurors have already heard from Cassie herself that when Combs discovered her new romance, he was furious and threatened to hurt Kid Cudi and blow up his car. Now, Kid Cudi provided his first-hand perspective of what happened next. According to Kid Cudi's testimony, the trouble came to a head in December 2011. That month, Combs learned about Cassie and Cudi's relationship, and his reaction was extreme. Kid Cudi testified that one night he received an alarming phone call from Capricorn Clark, a woman who was Combs' personal assistant at the time. Clark, sounding frightened, informed him that she was with Combs at Cudi's own house in Los Angeles. Stunned, Cudi immediately contacted Combs by phone. Combs calmly told him over the call, "I want to talk to you," interpreting this as a menacing invitation. Cudi rushed home, bracing for a confrontation. When Kid Cudi arrived at his Hollywood Hills residence, however, he found it empty. Combs had already left. But the scene inside left no doubt that someone had been there. Cudi described discovering that some of his personal belongings had been disturbed. Even wrapped presents had been opened, and his pet dog had been shut away in a separate room. It was an unnerving sign that Combs, or his associates, had broken into his home and rifled through his things. Kid Cudi reported this break-in to the police at the time, realizing that his brief romance with Cassie had provoked a dangerous situation. A few weeks later, the intimidation escalated into outright violence. Kid Cudi testified that in January 2012, just after New Year's, his prized car, a Porsche 911 convertible, was mysteriously destroyed by fire in his driveway. He told the court that he received a frantic call from a house staffer, his dog sitter, alerting him to the blaze. When the fire was extinguished, investigators found evidence of foul play. A Molotov cocktail had been used, a makeshift firebomb thrown into the car, charred remnants of which were discovered on the front passenger seat. The Porsche was completely burned out. This dramatic incident appeared to fulfill the very threat Cassie said Combs had made about blowing up Kid Cudi's car, and Cudi stated he had little doubt who was behind it. Faced with these frightening events, a home intrusion, and then the torching of his car, Kid Cudi decided to confront Combs directly. He testified that he felt things were spiraling out of control, and that he needed to speak with Combs man-to-man to put an end to the hostilities. Through intermediaries, a meeting was arranged for the next day at a Los Angeles hotel. This encounter, as described by Cudi on the stand, was like something out of a movie. When Kid Cudi arrived at the agreed location, he walked into the room to find Combs already there, standing standing by a window with his hands clasped behind his back, gazing out. Cudi vividly remembered the almost theatrical stance. On the witness stand, he even likened Combs's posture and demeanor to a comic book villain. Combs was standing like a Marvel supervillain, Cudi said, a description that caused a ripple of laughter in the courtroom. It was a rare moment of levity in an otherwise tense trial as jurors pictured the surreal scene. Despite the slight chuckles that Cudi's colorful analogy prompted, the underlying situation was deadly serious. Cudi then recounted the terse exchange he had with Combs during that meeting. He confronted Combs about the fire, asking bluntly what was going on. Essentially, what are we going to do about my car? Combs, he testified, remained eerily calm and expressionless and responded coldly, I don't know what you're talking about. Combs did not admit any involvement in the arson attack on the Porsche and offered no apologies at that time. The meeting ended without resolution. Combs denied everything, and Cudi left still shaken and angry, but unwilling to provoke further violence. It wasn't until years later that Combs would acknowledge any wrongdoing at all. Kid Cudi told the jury that he ran into Combs by chance at the Soho House Hotel some years after these incidents. On that occasion, Combs approached him and apologized for everything. A general apology for past actions. Notably, Cudi added, Combs still never explicitly mentioned the car or the break-in during this apology. The absence of a direct reference to those events left Cudi feeling that Combs was trying to bury the hatchet without fully owning up to the most violent acts. Through his testimony, Kid Cudi painted a gripping narrative of retaliation and intimidation. His account backed up key parts of Cassie's story. For example, Cassie had previously testified that Combs threatened to kill Kid Cudi or destroy his car. Hearing it now from Kid Cudi himself clearly made an impact on the jury. Cudi spoke somberly, at times appearing emotional, but he remained composed as he described being drawn into Combs's web of vengeance simply for dating Cassie. It was an eye-opening glimpse into how far Combs allegedly went to terrorize anyone connected to Cassie. Courtroom reactions and cross-examination. Once the prosecution finished with Kid Cudi's direct testimony, it was the defense's turn. Brian Steele, one of Combs's attorneys, rose to cross-examine the rapper. Steele's strategy was to cast doubt on Cudi's recollections and to undermine the prosecution's narrative of Combs as an all-powerful predator. The cross-examination led to some intense and revealing moments in court. Steele first probed the details of the December 2011 break-in. He suggested that perhaps Cudi's home wasn't as secure as it should have been. Under questioning, Kid Cudi acknowledged that he might have left the door unlocked that night. The defense attorney seized on that point, implying that if there was no forced entry, perhaps it was not as sinister as described, or even questioning whether Combs himself truly entered the house. In essence, Steele floated the idea that Cudi couldn't be certain who came inside if the door was open. Additionally, Steele highlighted that no property was reported stolen, and there was no physical damage to the house itself, trying to downplay the severity of the incident. Kid Cudi firmly maintained that the circumstances, including the disturbed items and his dog being confined unexpectedly, convinced him it was an unwanted intrusion orchestrated by Combs. The jury listened intently as Cudi held his ground against the defense's insinuations. Next, the defense shifted focus to Cassie's role in this saga. Attorney Brian Steele put forth a narrative that Cassie might not have been fully honest with either man. He suggested that Cassie was effectively living a double life involved with Combs and Kid Cudi at the same time. This line of questioning aimed to paint Cassie as a manipulative figure who played both sides, presumably to undermine her credibility and portray Combs as a jilted lover rather than a violent abuser. Steele hinted that if Cassie had indeed misled Combs about breaking up, Combs's anger, while not condoning any crimes, might be seen in a different light by the jury. Kid Cudi responded that he had genuinely believed Cassie was single when they dated, and he emphasized that regardless of Cassie's personal decisions, nothing justified the extreme acts that followed. It was clear that the defense was trying to deflect blame and sow doubt about Cassie's character. However, this tactic risks alienating jurors if they feel Cassie is being vilified unfairly. After all, 4 days of Cassie's own harrowing testimony likely earned her some sympathy. Observers noted some jurors frowning as Steele pressed on about Cassie's double life, indicating the defense had to walk a fine line. Throughout Kid Cudi's testimony, Sean Combs himself remained a conspicuous presence at the defense table. The defendant watched Cudi intently, sometimes whispering to his lawyers. In a noteworthy noteworthy moment near the end of Cudi's time on the stand, Combs was seen subtly shaking his head and quietly signaling to his attorneys not to pursue a particular question. This occurred when the defense appeared poised to follow up on a sensitive point, reportedly whether Cudi believed Combs' denials. Combs' gesture effectively halted that line of inquiry. It was an intriguing glimpse of the control Combs still attempts to exert, even while on trial. He was literally directing his defense strategy in real time, reminding everyone that he's an active participant in shaping how his story is told. Meanwhile, the prosecution took the opportunity on redirect to clarify key points and also to humanize Kid Cudi's experience. At one juncture, Assistant U.S. Attorney Emily Johnson asked Cudi a pointed question. What was your reaction when your car was set on fire? The courtroom fell silent, bracing for the answer. Cudi paused, visibly grappling with the memory. His answer was candid and unfiltered, so much so that it brought a bit of colorful language into the courtroom. He described being absolutely stunned and outraged, conveying that it was a mix of horror, anger, and disbelief to find out his car had been firebombed. His exact words included an expletive expressing what the expletive, a spontaneous, genuine reaction that the judge allowed for the sake of the record. This raw response underscored just how terrifying the ordeal was for him. Several jurors nodded sympathetically as Cudi spoke, seeming to appreciate his frankness. By the end of Kid Cudi's testimony, the court had heard a real-life tale of intimidation that sounded like it was ripped from a crime thriller. From the sneaky home invasion to the Marvel supervillain meetup and the fire-bombed car, Cudi's account bolstered the prosecution's case that Combs used fear and violence against those he viewed as rivals or traitors. It also corroborated parts of Cassie's story, lending further credibility to her allegations. As Cudi stepped down from the stand, there was a palpable sense in the courtroom that Day 9 had significantly ramped up the stakes of this trial. A courtroom sketch from Day 9 captures the tense atmosphere as a defense attorney cross-examines a witness. The high-profile nature of this trial has every moment under scrutiny, with both legal teams carefully navigating the testimony. Testimony of Cassie's former makeup artist. After a brief recess following Kid Cudi's dramatic appearance, the prosecution called another witness to testify in the afternoon. Mila Morales, a professional makeup artist who once worked closely with both Cassie and Diddy. Morales is not a household name, but her testimony proved to be very important in corroborating Cassie's claims of abuse. She had a unique insider perspective, having spent years by Cassie's side during the height of Cassie and Combs' relationship. Morales introduced herself and explained her history with the principals in the case. She worked as Cassie's personal makeup artist from 2007 until 2021, and during that period, she also occasionally did work for Sean Combs himself on photo shoots and events. Over those many years, Morales developed a deep bond with Cassie. On the stand, she became emotional as she described their relationship. She was like a little sister to me, Morales said of Cassie. This statement gave the jury a sense of how protective Morales felt toward the young singer. It also set the stage for the disturbing incident she was about to recount. Morales testified about one night in particular that has now become a key part of the case, an episode during Grammy Awards weekend in 2010. At that time, Cassie was still dating Combs, and Morales was traveling with them to help Cassie prepare for events. The two women were sharing a hotel suite in Los Angeles for the Grammys. Morales vividly remembered that late one night she was asleep on the couch in the living area of the suite, while Cassie was out at an event, or possibly at a party, with Combs. Suddenly, Morales was jolted awake by the sound of yelling and commotion. She realized Cassie had returned to the suite, and Combs had burst in right behind her, enraged about something. From her spot in the dark living room, Morales saw Combs storming in after Cassie, shouting in anger. Cassie was trying to retreat from him, clearly frightened. Morales described how she watched in alarm as an argument escalated into a physical altercation. Though Morales was not right next to them at that instant, she quickly gathered that Combs had struck Cassie. Cassie cried out, and in the chaos, Morales jumped up to intervene. She testified that she immediately went to Cassie's aid, attempting to shield her and calm Combs down. Morales recalled forcing herself between Combs and Cassie, at which point Combs finally pulled back. Seizing the moment, Morales helped Cassie get away from him. She ushered Cassie out of the suite entirely, taking her to another safe location on the hotel premises to escape the situation. Once they were safe and away from Combs, Morales got her first good look at Cassie's condition. She testified that Cassie had visible injuries on her face, specifically noting swelling and bruising on one of Cassie's eyes, a likely black eye, and a cut on her lip. Seeing Cassie injured like that deeply shook Morales. On the stand, she became tearful as she recounted how Cassie trembled with shock in the aftermath. Morales said she applied basic first aid and makeup to Cassie to cover the bruising the next day, and they kept the incident quiet out of fear. Importantly, Morales told the jury that in all her years of doing Cassie's makeup, she had only ever seen Cassie with injuries that one time, the incident at the Grammys. This detail strongly corroborates Cassie's own testimony that she went to great lengths to hide signs of abuse. It also suggests that while Combs's abuse may not have always left visible marks, on at least one occasion it did, and Morales was an eyewitness after the fact. Morales' account of the Grammy weekend assault aligns with earlier evidence. In Cassie's testimony, she mentioned a violent episode around that time, including an incident where Combs beat her so badly after a party that she had to be rescued by others. Morales essentially provided the same story from her perspective as a rescuer, lending even more credibility to Cassie's claims. The fact that Morales had nothing to gain personally and was clearly upset, even recalling it, made her testimony very compelling. She told the court that the image of Cassie's injured face stayed with her ever since, and it was one reason she ultimately distanced herself from working with Combs despite his superstar status. During cross-examination of Morales, the defense tried to minimize her testimony by suggesting that she might not have seen the exact moment of any hit and was merely assuming Combs hurt Cassie. Morales firmly responded that the context and Cassie's injuries spoke for themselves. "I knew what I saw," she insisted, explaining that Cassie's fear and the immediate bruises were not imagination. They were real, and they were caused by Combs. The defense also questioned why Morales continued working for Combs Enterprises if she had witnessed such abuse. Morales explained that, at the time, Cassie begged her not to report or speak of the incident. Cassie was afraid of what Combs might do if the incident got out. Out of loyalty and concern for Cassie's safety, Morales stayed silent then, a decision she said she has always regretted. Now, in this trial, she finally got to tell the truth publicly. Morales' testimony was brief but emotional. By the time she stepped down, she had given the jury a concrete example of Combs' alleged violence toward Cassie and demonstrated the culture of fear and silence that surrounded these events. Her description of pulling a frightened Cassie out of harm's way in that hotel suite was a powerful image of the nightmarish double life Cassie was living. Glamorous music industry events on the surface, and hidden abuse behind closed doors. It reinforced the prosecution's portrait of Combs as a man who could charm in public and terrorize in private. Conclusion of Day 9 and next steps. Day 9 ended on an earlier note than usual, as the court wrapped up proceedings in the mid-afternoon. After Mila Morales' testimony, the judge decided to adjourn slightly ahead of schedule. This was partly because the next witness on the list was a technical expert, and time was running short before the weekend. In a short stint before adjourning, jurors heard from a federal digital forensics agent who described how he had extracted data from Cassie's laptops and phones as part of the investigation. This testimony was mostly procedural, confirming that key evidence, such as emails, photos, and text messages, had been forensically obtained and preserved. There were no dramatic revelations from this agent. It served to authenticate evidence that may be presented later. With that out of the way, the judge noted that the following Monday was a federal holiday, Memorial Day, so the trial would pause for a long weekend. Court was officially adjourned until Tuesday, when Day 10 would commence. As Sean Combs was led out of the courtroom by U.S. Marshals at day's end, observers noted that he appeared more subdued than on previous days. All week long, Combs has maintained a routine whenever he exits the courtroom. He turns toward the public gallery where his family and supporters sit and pats his hand over his heart while looking at them, a gesture seemingly meant to convey love or appreciation. He did so again today, albeit with a strained smile. The accumulation of testimony, especially from someone as prominent as Kid Cudi, must weigh heavily on him. Combs' legal team also took the opportunity today to once again petition the judge for improved communication access for their client. Because Combs is being held in a federal detention facility during the trial, his attorneys complained that his allotted video conferencing time, currently 300 minutes per month, is insufficient for trial preparation. They requested it be expanded to 500 minutes per month so that Combs can consult with them more freely in the evenings and on weekends. The prosecutor, Maureen Comey, did not oppose the request and noted she'd seen similar accommodations granted in other cases. The judge indicated she would consider the matter, balancing security protocols with the defendant's right to participate in his defense. And so, Day 9 concluded with the court gearing up for a brief pause. It's been a pivotal week in this trial. Cassie's 4 days of testimony deeply implicated Combs, and now Kid Cudi's statements have added a new dimension, directly linking Combs to acts of intimidation outside his relationship with Cassie. The prosecution has been methodically building a narrative of Combs as someone who used his wealth and influence to control, coerce, and punish not just Cassie, but anyone in her orbit who crossed him. The defense, for its part, has signaled its strategy of casting doubt and assigning alternative explanations, though thus far, the witnesses' credibility remains intact. When the trial resumes after the holiday, we expect to hear from additional witnesses, potentially including more former employees and other figures from Combs' circle who can testify to the broader pattern of behavior. Each day is bringing us closer to a fuller picture of the allegations. We will continue to chronicle every development for you in this series. Thank you for following our coverage of Day 9. This has been an eventful chapter, from Kid Cudi's explosive revelations to supportive testimony bolstering Cassie's story. If you've missed any earlier days, feel free to watch our previous episodes to catch up on the trial's progression. Stay tuned for Day 10 when the court reconvenes and the saga continues. We'll be here to break it all down for you in our next installment as the high-profile trial of Sean Puff Diddy Combs moves forward. Until then, take care, and we'll see you in the next episode of our daily Diddy trial documentary series. Thank you once again for being part of my community, and I look forward to seeing you in our future videos. Until then, stay beautiful, stay natural, and stay you.